Hey guys, welcome to Top Table Gaming. Today I'm going to be talking about one of my favourite lists from the current edition. Hey guys, you're here with your host Top Table Ben, and as I said in the intro, I'm going to be talking today about one of the lists that I've kind of played with quite extensively in the new edition of the game. So the reason that I've played quite a lot with this list is A, I find it really fun to play with, B, it's got some of my favourite characters and some of my favourite models from the range in it, and C, it's just quite an easy and straightforward list to use. There's no kind of, you don't necessarily need to have really careful positioning. You know, it's very much just a throw it on the table and throw it at your enemy kind of army. There are a few ways to kind of finesse it a little bit, which I'll kind of discuss in a little bit more detail a bit later on. But overall, it's a very straightforward army to get to grips with. So, in my opinion at least, I think it's a good army for somebody who is beginning to get to grips with the Middle-earth strategy battle game, you know, to get their teeth into and understand how to play the game. Now, although this army, as I said, is kind of one of my go-tos, it's only my go-to at kind of lower points levels, and there are reasons for this. So for me, I think this is at its best anywhere from 500 to 600 points. As I said, the reasons for this I will come on to a little bit more later on. But I do feel it kind of fits this kind of 500, 600 point niche really, really well. And kind of that's where it is going to absolutely excel and be at its best. So without further ado, let's take a look at the list. So at 500 points, we have Aragorn, King LSR on Armoured Horse, with 6 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield and Spear, 3 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield, and 2 Citadel Guard with Longbows. And the second warband is Hurin on Horse, 8 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield and Spear. That army has 21 units, 2 bows and 6 might. At 600 points, it's Aragorn, again on Horse, with 9 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield and Spear, 3 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield, and 3 Citadel Guard with Longbows. And the second warband is Hurin on Horse, with 9 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield and Spear, 3 Warriors of Minas Tirith with Shield, 3 Citadel Guard and 3 Citadel Guard with Longbows. So for a total of 32 units, again 6 bows and again 6 might, just like the 500 points list. So what do I think are the strengths of this list then? So obviously Aragorn is a might battery. He is constantly churning out a point of might each turn, so it'll constantly keep you on the move and kind of going up, being able to heroic move and get the jump on the enemy. It means that Aragorn can call all important heroic strikes if he needs to, if he comes up against something big and nasty. And it just means that you're kind of constantly keeping your enemy on the back foot, really, because even when they are out of might, you will still have mights to go. Both heroes have got a pool of 3 might each anyway, but by having that one in the bank every single turn with the Mighty Hero special rule, it just means that you are going to keep on moving when your enemy will probably be out of might towards the end of the game. Second point is that you have got the Aragorn and Hurin combo. Now, Aragorn in his own right is an absolute beast. With Anduril, he's wounding on 4+ if he decides to go two-handed, which you're probably not always going to do it, but there might be occasions where you decide to do that. But he will be mostly wounding on 4+, which is absolutely fantastic. He's got 3 attacks. He's got 3 the kind of the right stats in all the right places. He's got 3 might, will, and fate. Defense 7, fight 6. So he is just an absolute tank, and we know he's a tank. That's why he's one of my favourite heroes. He's just he's brilliant on the tabletop. And with the Armoured Horse, you know, he's doing even more damage each turn. When you add Hurin into that as well, the guy has got 2 attacks, but also on Horse, if he's charging, he gets 3 attacks. Now, Aragorn is brilliant because he acts as a banner for his army. Anybody within 6 inches gets a dual reroll, which is amazing. So it means that Hurin can already reroll one of those. Hurin also has another special rule, which I forget the name of at this very moment. In defense of the king, which means that he also gets to re-roll a dice in the duel when he is within, I think it's 3 inches of Aragorn or Denethor. So that essentially means that on the charge, Hurin gets pretty much 5 chances to win that combat. He's already fight 5. He can heroic strike as well. So he is, you know, a fantastic combo when he works alongside Aragorn. So they're just an absolute, for me, they're an absolute dream team, and they hit like an absolute tank as well. Now, we said earlier that Aragorn is wounding on 4+. Hurin is strength 4. But he does have a master-crafted hand and a half, master-forged hand and a half sword, which means that he gets to go two-handed without a penalty. You know, even kind of quite heavily armoured foes, he is now starting to wound on 4s and 5s rather than 5s, 6s and 6s by 4s. So it just makes him that much more killy, especially when he's winning those combats consistently as well. So Hurin really is a hero not to be underestimated when he is used alongside Aragorn. Third point is Aragorn has access to all the heroic actions. He has pretty much access to everything, which is great. So it doesn't mean that you have to kind of cherry pick your heroes. Now, obviously that does mean that you might deplete his might store a little bit quicker than you would like to, but it means that wherever he is, he's able to call heroic combats, heroic moves, heroic strikes, heroic marches. So another point that I'll come on to is maneuverability, but the heroic march does kind of help negate that to some extent. But by having this huge range of heroic actions available to him, it just means that he is that much more useful to this army. Next point is that the warriors of Minas Tirith, who make up the bulk of this army, are really, really tough. Now, fight 3 is nothing to write home about, and you know, you are going to be at least matching, if not lower, than the majority of the armies that you come up against. However, where I feel that the warriors of Minas Tirith really excel is their shield wall special rule, which means that everybody has got a shield, as long as they're in base contact with 2 others, their defense goes up to defense 7. So at defense 7, it means that a lot of enemies are going to be needing 6s by 4s to wound you, or even some of the harder hitting ones are still going to be needing those 6s. So it just makes it that much more difficult for you to break this army. It just means that this army is really solid, dependable, and really tough. And you know, if you do kind of get into that grind where you've got 2 opposing shield walls, unless you're coming up against something that is really heavily armoured and has a higher fight value, then you should do okay. You should be able to last at least long enough for Aragorn and Hurin to come and help them out a little bit. Now, some people, when I've posted this list online, have said, well, why don't you include rangers in there to get up to that fight 4? And you know, get a bit more shooting in the list. Now, I have included 2 Citadel Guard in there, and there's a few reasons why I've included the Citadel Guard. So the first one is the bodyguard special rule. With the amount of terror causing enemies out there, I want to have a couple of units in there that I can really make that are dependable for pinning down terrifying stuff. You know, there might be that situation where I really, really need to make sure that I do get in and charge somebody, where sometimes, you know, if you want to charge in a warrior of Minas Tirith who is normally defense 3, defense 4 with the army special rule, which I'll come on to in a little bit. But if I want to really kind of pin down a terrifying enemy, I want to make sure that I have got somebody that's absolutely dependable and that is going to be able to charge in on that foe where I need him, basically. It also means that I'm not kind of having a back line of rangers. I get that fight 4 is incredibly useful. However, I feel that for this army and the way that this army kind of works, I feel that the shield wall and having warriors of Minas Tirith in a bundle is far, far more important than having A, the higher fight value, and B, slightly more shooting in the list. So that's why I would kind of prefer personally to go for a full complement of warriors of Minas Tirith. So some of the challenges that you are going to come up against with this army is it is a bit of a one-trick pony. So you are very reliant on your two heroes. Now, if something happens to those guys, you know, you are really going to struggle. So as soon as you see somebody putting any magic on the table, which can kind of lock them up for a couple of turns, it does mean that the army isn't quite as dependable as you would normally expect it to be. So even things like cheap wraiths, they can be a bit nasty, any of the named wraiths. And that's why I said at the beginning of the video, this tends to work better at lower points values. And the reason for that is you are less, in my experience at least, you are less likely to come up against those magic, you know, big casters that are able to effectively turn after turn after turn pin your heroes down. So that's why I think it definitely works better at lower points levels. Maneuverability can also be a slight issue with this army, where you generally want to kind of keep your shield walls together. You don't really want to have to separate your army out, because it does mean that they are kind of very easy. It's going to be very easy to dismantle if it's kind of all fragmented up. In terms of movement as well, obviously your warriors are only moving 6 inches, so having the ability to heroic march with Aragorn is really important. It means that they can move up to 9 inches per turn. That's going to be incredibly important, you know, for kind of more movement-based scenarios. So that's kind of something to consider, and probably use some of Aragorn's might to be able to do that. The other thing that I have found is that if I do need to do any kind of maneuvering or get somebody onto an objective, it usually has to be one of the heroes that does that. And it does mean that then the rest of the army is kind of left quite exposed, because they're not within the kind of heroic spheres of influence of the two heroes, or, you know, you have to kind of sacrifice your positioning to go and claim an objective. So that is one of the big challenges that I have found whilst playing this list. One of the other things that you're going to have a challenge with is the low numbers that this army has compared to other armies, especially other horde armies. It is going to be very easy for the likes of Goblin Town or just Orc spam with captains and kind of lower level heroes. Although Aragorn and Hurin will make short work of them, there will be just too many for both of those guys to take on. And even with Defense 7, when you throw enough numbers at the Warriors of Minas Tirith, they are still going to be getting ground down over time. So it's really kind of important that if you do come up against those armies, that Aragorn and Hurin are trying to do their work as quickly as possible. So heroic combats are going to be really important, trying to break the army as quickly as possible, and trying to get rid of some of those heroes so that the orcs don't have a standfast. One of the other challenges with the list that I have also put on up here is there is no banner. Now, Aragorn himself counts as a banner for the purposes of rerolls, which is incredibly important. However, some of the older scenarios do have extra points and VPs awarded for having a banner at the end of the match. Now, if you don't start with one, you're already at a disadvantage. Now, you could sacrifice some Warriors of Minas Tirith for that, so you could, I think it's 4 you'd have to kind of lose to pick up 1 banner. It does make it that little bit more difficult, because you have even lower numbers there. So there is that kind of trade-off. Personally, I tend to play these lists without a banner and just try and make sure that I claw the VPs back whilst I'm playing games. If you do happen to come up and play those scenarios, it just means that you are slightly on the back foot compared to your opponent. So that's it. That is one of my go-to lists in this edition of the game. As I said at the intro, this is an army that I have played quite extensively. It's my kind of go-to army. It's dead easy to pack up. It's kind of low model count as well, which is great. So it just doesn't mean that you're kind of constantly moving loads and loads of models on the table. Got a couple of my favourite heroes and favourite models in there. So for me, it is going to continue to be one of my go-to armies. It may not be the most competitive, but hey, it is fun to play with. Are there any armies in this edition of the game that have been your absolute go-to from day one? Or do you feel that this army is a bit of a one-trick pony? Is there any changes that you would make to it to make it any better? Why not let me know in the comments below? Thanks for watching, guys. I really appreciate you taking the time to, if you watched it this far. Make sure you're checking out all the links in the description below. There's links to our Patreon page, there's links to our Element Games affiliate account, which gives us, the guys at Top Table, a little boost back from Element Games if you buy anything using that link. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.